Glad to have you back. Now we switch gear now to look at the appropriation bill for 2025. Of course, the Federal Executive Council kickstarted that discussion yesterday, and of course they are proposing 47.9 trillion naira for 2025 budget. If the breakdown of that budget, you look at the non-debt recurrent expenditure, there 9.92 trillion naira, capital expenditure 7.72 trillion naira, debt service 8.25 trillion naira, statutory transfer 1.37 trillion naira, sinking fund 243.66 billion naira, and of course we're going to borrow 13.8 trillion naira as part of the budget. If you look at the key assumption, oil price is pegged there at $75 a barrel, crude oil production 2.06 million barrels per day, exchange rate 1,400 naira to the US dollar, and of course growth, GDP growth projection 4.06% has been proposed yesterday by the Federal Executive Council. Of course, this budget will eventually have to be sent to the National Assembly, where they will have to deliberate and, of course, come to the final conclusion as to the amount that will be passed there. Of course, this is way higher than the 2024 budget by about 35%. This is huge, but if you quantify it in terms of dollars, the 47.9 trillion naira may not be so much there. But let's go into the discussion now and get some reaction from my guest here. Aliyu Ilias is an economist. He joins me right here in the studio. Good morning, Mr. Aliyu.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yes, always a pleasure. Let's begin with the discussion now. 47.9 trillion naira budget for 2025. What's your reaction to that?
Right. First and foremost, we appreciate that it's timely. I think maybe the National Assembly will have to sacrifice their Christmas and Xmas and New Year to make sure that they actually pass so that the calendar will be perfect. But in terms of the amount, for me, I'm a proponent of a higher budget, because I don't think we should be doing less than 100 trillion as a country of 230 million and with our economic indices. So I think we need to do more. Then comparing the 2025 budget to 2024, I think that's where we should start from. For me, 2024 budget is higher than 2025 budget, because if you take it back to dollar value, you discover that 2024 budget is about 35.5 trillion, while current one is about 28 trillion.
The current 47.
Yes, no, if you bring it back to dollar, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
it's about $28 billion, and that's a serious challenge. That means this one is poor compared to others, and that's our problem. And that's why we always cry in terms of devaluation of naira and this follow-up problem. Having seen it, I think our major problem now is the ambitious indicators, the basis at which they put it on. That's a serious problem too, because you have to look at the economic indices presently now. I have to forecast what happened next. As this budget forecast appropriately, that is the major question.
Like you did mention, it's a major concern to me as well. I was actually coming to that, because if you look at 47.9 trillion, it looks so bogus, if you quantify it in naira. But by the time you convert it to the US dollar, it's just in few billions and
it's sad that we are doing below the last budget.
Because if you look at the exchange rates last year, the exchange rate assumption for last year was just less than 1,000 naira.
Right.
But as of today, we are quoting 1,400 naira, which is not still feasible.
Which is a problem.
Given what we are having. So you're blaming the naira devaluation.
Right. It's a serious problem, and we must look into it critically, because that means all the revenue government is getting cannot also show in what we are actually going to spend. That's a serious problem. That means it does not even have value. That's been eroded by forex. That is just simply what we are realizing now.
So let's look at it this way now. Because when you talk about having 100 trillion naira budgets,
yes, that's standard.
But if you look at if you can get that graphics on again, if you look at the breakdown,
yes.
Now we're going to spend 13.8 trillion naira. I mean, we're going to borrow 13.8 trillion naira,
right,
which is also going to increase our debts.
Right.
As of today, Nigeria debt is over 130 trillion naira. So by the time you add 13.8 trillion naira, which I know the government is still going to borrow more, is a deficit budget. Don't you think so?
Right, deficit budget is not a problem and it's not bad. Go to any country, most countries still do deficit budget. But when you borrow, what do you borrow for? That is the question. That is the major question. Because for me, I prefer you go and borrow and let your capital expenditure be higher than your debt servicing. Because if you look at it now, the debt service is higher than capital expenditure. Then capital expenditure is what benefits you and I and the general public because of terms of social infrastructure, more health facility, more education facility, more road. These are what we want to see. But this is a sad one because it simply means the whole country will be benefiting from only 7.2 trillion. That's a sad one. So for me, I prefer you even borrow more and make sure it's a project-tied loan, not for recurrent expenditure. Because what we are borrowing now, it will less the debt service from the 13. That means only remain 5. So it's better we do what will actually galvanize us, move us ahead, and do more businesses.
So in all of this now, where is the gains of the subsidy removal?
Right. So
because we're expected to have more revenue, more money for government from subsidy. Where is the gains? We're supposed to have seen the impact on the budget.
On the surface, we have a gain because we are now sharing about 1.2 trillion FAC allocation.
Yeah, I have argued that.
Yes.
I argued that with a lot of people with FAC sharing. A lot of people have said that, oh, FAC has increased. But if you have to look at the value of the naira and the current cost of living, is nothing.
Actually, that's why I said on the surface. It's not the reality on ground. But if government is measuring for it, they'll be measuring the higher amount they're actually sharing. But in terms of value, the forex or the floating of naira has actually eroded the value. So if you are giving a state 100 billion before, and it has, let's say the value is at 100 billion at that time. Now if you give a same state 100 billion, the value is less than 50% of it. So, and that's the major problem. So when we're talking about economists, we must be futuristic. You know, when you are talking, you must look beyond where you are now. I think it appeared that all the policy direction of this government, they did not actually look at the consequence that can come after it. Their own is to generate revenue. So generating revenue is not the problem. What's the value of the revenue you're actually generating? And what's the impact? Let's even look at internal impact on citizens and even look at negative externalities that it actually brings. So it has shown that there's a direct proportional effect from the value of dollar or your devaluation and life well-being of Nigerians, and that has actually came to show. And that's why I said, for me, one thing is still missing in this government. I want to see their short-term, medium-term, long-term economic plan. That will make all the entities, maybe private sector, local government, state, business,
enable them to plan,
plan and come together. Okay, this is our direction, right? These are the things we are actually. Government is talking about looking at 1 trillion dollar economy. Well, I think the only thing we can celebrate them for is the benefit we get from increment in oil production. I think that they deserve an applause for that, But the thing is can they be sustained? Can they sustain it? That is the question. I know sustainability is key because that's why I said this budget is an ambitious budget because most of the base they put it, the baseline may not be realistic in the long run. In fact, if you are to assess 2024 budget, you can see that it falls short of expectation. So these are the problems.
Yeah, indeed. Let's look at some of the key assumptions now, like you rightly mentioned. Let's look at the oil price. Nigeria is an oil-dependent economy. So 90% of our revenue comes from crude oil. $75 a barrel for crude oil. Do you think this is feasible as of today?
Well,
crude oil price globally is about $71 per barrel.
I had little issue with that because I don't think we can even surpass or we can maintain that level because with the coming of Trump, remember America is an oil producing country too, and they are not part of OPEC.
Yes.
So they have a way of affecting OPEC.
Absolutely. Trump believes in low oil prices.
Exactly. So with his own perception, I don't know how we are going to manage. But the thing is, if we can jack up our production, that will help because we now do naira to naira now. We now have Dangote to actually supply directly. I wouldn't know if that must be captured in OPEC, but OPEC will insist.
That won't be captured.
No, OPEC will insist that it's a global agreement. Exactly. So anything you are bringing out, you must account for, because OPEC is going to calculate it for the output that is coming out. So they must, and that's why I'm looking at how are they going, because if OPEC said your benchmark is 1.8, million barrel per day, you cannot come and abuse it. That's why I said it may look ambitious.
This include condescent.
That is another thing. So we have to look at it very, very well. For me, I think that is still within the range. We may not get above, but we can.
You don't think that with Trump coming in as the president of the United States, I know he's going to flood the market with crude oil. America is a big, especially when you take a state like Texas, one of the biggest oil producing states in America.
That China is becoming much more business allied to Nigeria, because as of now, China is our best, biggest trading partner. So China can also.
But that is also coming at a cost.
Yeah, but that's how it is. You must trade off something, and that's why we said our trade policy. How far is it? Why we are trading with them? What are we also benefiting? We must work on our balance of trade and balance of payment. Absolutely. If you can work on it, it's not bad. Let them take advantage. Let us also take, and perhaps if they are even taking advantage of us, where are we also enjoying things? But for America, I think the business deal, perhaps you also look at Nigeria is also getting close to BRICS. Right? They call it, there's a nomenclature they are using now. Is it partner or what have you? They're trying to get close to BRIC. So that will also give us much more business opportunity.
Well, taking the advantage of the opportunity is what matters. Nigeria has been exposed to a lot of business opportunities that we have not taken the advantage of. Don't forget the currency swap deal that was signed under former President Muhammadu Buhari. We've not been able to take advantage of that. I think that's a very key thing that we must take advantage of. Because now that we trade with them more, that means dollar would have lost its value. If you actually trade exactly. So but I don't think we are taking advantage of that as well. Let's look at the exchange rates. 1,400 naira to the US dollar. As of today, is over 1,750.
I think, and that's a serious problem. I think that's quite not a good one. If I even expect them to actually even do more by coming down more, because now my hope is that Dangote coming on board at least will help us in terms of forex. With Dangote now, we can now say because if you look at where 40% of our forest is actually going to importation of petroleum product. So with Dangote now, I think it's coming down. So I think I ever expect them to have come down beyond that, because maybe 1,200, because they have a lot of instruments they can actually work on to actually make it, fight it more to actually come down.
But marketers are still importing fuel.
Well, I don't.
NNPC has debunked claims that they have stopped marketers from.
I don't have issue with competition. I think it only reduces. As an economist, we believe in competition. Even America has about 132 refinery, and they are still important. Saudi have over 4 refineries. They are still important. So it's not bad, but it will bring competition, right? And that's why we are saying let NNPC also initiate their own refinery. Because they are like, what do you call them now? Marketer now. For me,
middlemen.
They are even they're like marketer. So the major thing is that if we can actually work and allow competition, we have, because Dangote should not be giving monopoly too, because monopoly lead to absolute, abuse of business opportunity. So I think we need competition. Allow other people also building refineries. Samad is also coming up, and all these other ones are still coming up. They should allow competition. Our own also should work. At this point in time, we need to perhaps. I also saw that they said South African companies are on queue to buy fuel from Dangote. So Dangote can also sell out while we also buy. It will bring a balanced competition.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, a lot of countries, especially in West Africa, are also waiting to buy Dangote crude as well. So we hope that. Well, my concern is this exchange rate, 1,400 naira, and when we are at 1.7, what do you expect from the National Assembly when they begin to debate this budget?
Well, I don't want to use our normal nomenclature, which is called padding. I don't want us to hear padding, but the thing is, I am convinced it will be jacked up to about 50 trillion. Ordinarily, even with hope that there will be supplementary budgets after this budget, there's no way we will not exceed 50 billion.
Don't you think we should demand for accountability from the 2024 budget?
I think that's the
How was it spent?
That's the problem. The major people that can call them for accountability is the National Assembly, because they must have go through oversight function. Okay, this amount was appropriate for social road. How many have you completed? This one was for energy. How many have you? So I think the major people are to do that, except we now look at CSO, who can actually appraise. I think CSO focus much more on health and maybe little of other structural budgetary allocation. But I think we should always hold them accountable. But for me, even the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu today, when they are presenting the budget to nationals, I expect them to say, this 2024 have actually achieved its aim 65%. Yes. That is how a leader should do, so that we know that, okay, last year we achieved 65%, while there's still ongoing implement. Because there's some project that is not going to be implemented this year. It's maybe first quarter or second quarter of next year, but it has been captured, maybe they have been paid for. So, and this is how what I expect from Tinubu today, or whenever he's presenting that we have achieved 60% or 65%. I don't think we have go beyond 65%.
Have we even achieved up to 30%?
So that's
if you look at the quality of life of Nigerians, it doesn't appear that there's any budget running in the economy, except maybe the money is going into some few people's
pockets. That's why I said the budget is too small for we to see the work. We need to do more in our budget.
Some people said it's not too small, but it's the corruption in it that is a problem.
Well, in as much as
if I want to agree corruption, the money will be enough.
I don't think so.
At least to cater for 50-60% of the economy.
What I'm trying to say is that we go to other countries, maybe South Africa, Egypt, other countries. You see that our budget is too small compared to what we are supposed to be doing, compared to our market size, our population, our need for only road. Do you know what the investment we need to do in road, the investment we need to do in health, in education? If you are to consider all those things, this will not take us to where we want to get to in the next 20 years if we continue this level of budget.
Indeed, the budget is still very, very poor, and of course performing below expectation as well. Let's look at the GDP growth projection, 4.06%. How will you describe this?
I think this is the most overambitious part of it, because I'm not sure we even cross 3%.
The last one was 3.19.
Yeah, I'm not sure we cross 3%. I think even now the IMF, Britain institution, are still saying we are going to do between 2.9%. So for me, I think they should be doing like 3.5, not looking at 4 points. Even with a lot of trade policy that they are trying to bring up, I'm not still sure that we can meet up such.
Do you don't think the ongoing reforms, the impact to significantly, affect the GDP in 2025?
There will not be development in Nigeria until small businesses, manufacturing sector are well catered for, and those are people that will champion GDP in Nigeria, not salary earners. So we must look into that direction. What have they done to impact small businesses? We have energy problem, and that's a major problem. You could see most manufacturing companies are even shutting down. So when they are shutting down, how do you now want to increase your GDP? When small business cannot even do it, when our NPR is as high, you'll be borrowing at maybe around 30% for your business. Who will go and borrow? And there's no good business person that will not go to bank to borrow. As in, not high level business, let me use that language. Even the Dangote itself borrow to build like that. So it's important that we need to look at that direction.
Indeed, talking about looking at that direction, what do you want CBN to do now? Because you made mention about the NPR, which is very, very low. And of course, part of the reason, if you see the CBN survey that came out a couple of days ago, part of the reaction that they got from the people is high interest rates having impact on businesses in the country. What do you think CBN should do as we wind the year is winding down, and of course we expect to have at least one more meeting before the end of the year? What do you expect to do? Are you looking at easing the NPR, or you think the current position will be maintained?
Well, I think NBS report is supposed to be out soon for last month.
Absolutely.
Expecting the so I think that will throw more light, and it will make them to know that actually it's a fluke that will have true reduction in inflation consequent. In the last past 2 months or so. So for me, I think NPR must be ease or tarry. And why do I say so? If you look at this CBN governor, his direction is quite confusing to an extent, because since he came, he has been increasing the NPR, and it have direct negative impact on businesses, because every business believes in borrowing. So if you don't borrow, how do you now survive in this climate. So I was thinking there would be a special window for MSME or for the manufacturing sector through BOI that could be much more robust, that people can actually approve. But the way it is now, it's quite there's no sign that it's going to be. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu must not be adamant. If people in our financial handlers are not doing well, we should be able to show them way out, because we must not continue to use one person and we continue to have the same result. Look at the efforts he has made. I agree, he has made effort, but as he yield, he has bring about over 30%, 35 framework to actually deal with our forest problem. As it yield result, you know, that it has not yield result. As our inflation really come down the way we are expecting, it has not. Everything is going higher. So I think if they don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to actually manage it, you can also show them way and let other people that
is it a question of capacity, or is it the systemic problem that they're trying to deal with?
Well, when you are handling systemic problem, you know, for 1 year, 6 months or thereabout, there should be a direction by now. Even the Emefiele that will complain about so much, we see some things getting better during this time. You know, everybody have its own style, but this style, it appears they are much more adamant on looking at the reality on ground. The reality on ground should be the major thing that we speak for them, and that's why I said let's wait for MBS. MBS will also show them what is actually happening.
The new direction to follow.
Right.
Well, you talk about the reality versus the reality on ground versus
assumptions,
or even sometimes the advice of the IMF and the World Bank. A lot of people are saying we are tailoring our economy towards IMF and World Bank advice. Of course, if you look at historically, the advice has not really been beneficial to any economies in the world. Do you think we're actually treading dangerous paths?
Well, for me, in as much as my belief is that IMF is trying to guide their own. You know, when they keep on giving you what to do, the back end they are looking at what benefits their economy. You won't you won't expect them to tell them what we tell you what we negate or affect.
Do they really need to tell us what to do?
Exactly.
We have a peculiar economy,
right?
That needs peculiar solutions.
That's what I'm saying. So we must start looking at geoeconomics, where we look at your area, what actually concerns you, what you need to deal with. Imagine the last time they told us, they said we should brave up. I mean, we should gear up. That there's going to be this. To sustain this better economy in future, we must continue this suffering. I should use that language for the next 15 years. That's why you know that they are not sensitive to matters of taste. People are being dogmatic to matters that concern people directly. It is clear that there's hardship in Nigeria, and it's a function of food security. You recall even President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he came, he said 3 months after, June specifically, last year, he said, I declare state of emergency on food security, but we've not seen reflection of it anyway.
1 year plus after.
So it's a sad one. That means he has not actually put everything in. And I said at that time that land does not belong to the federal government. It belongs to states. So you need to have a conk negotiation and discussion with them before you can. Perhaps most of the FAC allocation, if President Bola Ahmed can say it's a direction, please invest about 2 billion every allocation to agriculture. That would have maybe show by now.
If not for a system that is faulty, do you need to wait for president to issue a directive for you to invest in your own state as a governor? You campaign for election, your people elected and voted for you, made promises. Do you need the president to give you a direction for you to be able to provide food for your people?
As it were, every governor have their own priority. Some want to build stadium, some want to build the airports. So that's why you must. That's why I say if there's an economic plan.
You need to eat food before you can go to the field.
The economic plan would have showed that in next so year, this is at the percentage I want you to invest. So that should have guide. So they will now look at that area.
But there's a guide already. If you talk about Maputo Declaration, the 10% budget for agriculture, have we been able to achieve it?
Right. So that is we have to now domesticate it. Yes, it is there at the African level, but it has to be domesticated by the president. Yes, that's okay. President will now say this year social allocation must go into agriculture. Look at a governor like Bago. Bago is investing in agriculture. Nobody told him, but that is the way everybody should. Because you know why? The largest employer of labor up till now is still agriculture. So we need to do more in that area so that our people can be sufficient in terms of feeding themselves, and also be able to actually send goods out for commercial purposes.
At least you need to eat before you can be able to do anything.
Very,
very important.
There's nothing you can do if you don't, and that's a bit of a problem now in Nigeria now. Food is a major problem.
And indeed, government must be aware that, of course, the people need to eat for them to be able to survive. It's too early for us to start talking about the next election when people are indeed very, very hungry. As we wrap up now, let's look at this huge budget again as it is on paper. Do you think I'm looking at how the Senate is going to, the National Assembly is going to look at it when eventually it's going to be presented to the National Assembly, because a lot of concern, we've raised quite a whole lot here now. What sort of advice do you think you give to the National Assembly on how to examine and, of course, analyze this budget before eventually, pass the budget?
Right, but the National Assembly have the right to tilt the budget, to adjust, remove, what have you. So I think we need to go and look at the benchmarks. Those benchmarks actually have very, especially the dollar benchmark, where we are using 1,400. Can't we push ourselves, sometimes challenge ourselves to actually do more in that area? Because, that affects the life of Nigerians. If you may think that value of dollar to naira is a major problem of everything. It brings about cost of goods and services. So I think they can tilt towards that and make sure they have a nice effort to look at that. But in terms of budgets, I'm convinced I've not seen the breakdown in terms of sectorial breakdown. So how much is for health, how much is for education. I think by the time they may see reasons. But I must also tell them that they need to move more and increase on education and agriculture and health.
Indeed.
These two areas key. Then they must. If there's one thing I can advise them to do, can we have a better capital expenditure that is more than debt service?
Well, I'm sure they will do justice to it. Probably they will take your advice and, of course, see how they can apply to the budget as well. I must thank you for your time. Aliyu Ilias is an economist, and of course, thank you for your time on Business Daily today. We appreciate your contributions.
Thank you for having me.
All right. With that is a wrap on the show for today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Yusuf Akogu.